All right. Let's see if we get better here. All right. Hello, everybody. I don't know if everyone's still back or what's going on. Well, I know what's going on. We had to jump off because my browser froze, but I don't know who all is still here. Is what I'm saying. Hello, Edwin. Good to see ya. Hello, Renee. Good to see ya. Sally, Ron, have you been invited to a TYT power panel lately? I have not. But good to see ya, and I hope to be invited to one soon. Let's see. Oh, Dan, what's up? You're in snowy Seattle for the snowpocalypse in Seattle. Sorry about that delay, everybody. I just my browser kind of froze up on me, so I couldn't do anything. And I apologize for that. Chris, hey Ron, my girlfriend got us tickets to your indie show for a Valentine's Day present. That's freaking awesome. Your girlfriend sounds really cool, Chris, and I can't wait to see you guys in Indy. What's up, Daniel? Good to see you. What's up, William? Good to see you. Post-Grammy show, indeed. It is Music Monday, and the Grammys happened last night. We're going to talk about it. I didn't watch any of it. It's not my thing. We'll talk more about it as soon as the show officially starts. But you guys know that I'm not a big award show person, and the Grammys especially, I just don't have much use for. Yeah. I don't want to come off as a total Debbie Downer about it, but I have my reasons for feeling the way I do. You know what I mean? What's up, Wesley? What's up, Jennifer? What's up, David? What's up, Lady? What's up, Tim? What's up, John? What's up, Chips? Edwin, I don't know, like 99% of the musicians. I, too, had that problem. Sagittary says, award shows are for rich people jerking off. It is pretty much a circle jerk. And speaking of circle jerks, it's time for us to start the show. What a weird transition that was. But we are officially over 30, which means the show has officially begun. Welcome to Get Your News On with Ron, the world's first viewer-curated streaming news show. Sorry about that tech hiccup there at first, but we are back now. And it's Music Monday, you guys. So we're going to talk about the Grammys for a hot minute. And then we're going to talk about thoughts on the Grammys. So first of all, you know what? I'll start out with a kind of nice sentimental thing here. So Chris Cornell won an award last night, posthumously, and his children accepted the award for him. Chris Cornell's two youngest children, Tony and Christopher, accepted their father's posthumous Grammy Award. And they said that it wasn't easy. It was very difficult. Tony, the 14-year-old, told reporters, including people backstage afterwards, we miss him so much and saw him work on this so hard. He was always working on his music because it was his passion, and it was really sad that he couldn't be there to accept it. That's nice. I mean, that's pretty cool. That's cool that they were able to accept it for him. And, I will say this. I'll give kind of like my kind of positive take on award shows before I give like my actual take on award shows. For somebody like a Chris Cornell who was in Soundgarden, and for somebody like a Kurt Cobain, and for somebody like, any type of musician that started out in a genre of music that was very underrepresented, that they never thought would see any kind of mainstream success. There had to be that moment when you get something like a Grammy or something like that where you're just like, holy shit, this happened. And when you talk to musicians or you hear interviews with musicians from those eras, like Southern California first-generation punk rockers, they'll all say that. They're like, we never thought this was going to last. We never thought anyone was going to care about this other than a small group of people. We never thought we would play clubs of more than 100 people. We never thought any of that was going to happen. We never imagined we'd be playing stadiums. We never imagined that. If you came up in the skate punk scene in the 90s, or the grunge scene in the late 80s, early 90s, or the college indie scene, or the 80s hardcore scene, like, you never imagined it would ever get any type of mainstream success. And some of it didn't. But even the stuff that didn't, I'm sure that, Ian MacKaye, when he was just jamming with his first band, the Teen Idols, I don't think he ever thought he'd still be putting out records over 30 years later, and he'd have this successful company where he has employees who he's able to give benefits to. Like, I'm sure he never thought that. I'm sure Greg Graffin and Bad Religion never thought they'd be helping to fund, one of the most successful indie labels in the country, probably in the world, Epitaph Records. So I'm sure for someone like Chris Cornell, if he would have been around to accept that award, he would have had one of those kind of moments where he would have thought, man, I never thought it would have come to this point. And, I used to live in Seattle. I know some people that were around during the whole grunge scene, and they would describe it, and they're like, yeah, none of us ever thought. And, Kurt Cobain was just a shy kid who would buy guitar strings from me. This is, one of my friends talking, not me. But it was like Kurt Cobain was just some shy kid that would buy guitar strings from me. No one ever thought, oh, this guy's going to change the face of music. This dude right here. One of my friends would tell me I used to deliver food to Alice in Chains. They lived in this small house in West Seattle where they kind of had a little bit of space around them so they could just practice every night of the week. And they would just practice and practice and practice. I would show up with the food. Half the time they didn't have enough money to cover it, but I would just let it slide because I liked their music. And they would play a couple songs for me, as a way of saying thank you for the food because they didn't have enough money to pay for it. I have a friend that had those stories about delivering late night food to Alice in Chains. So, the grunge era, no one ever thought that was going to happen. So when you're accepting a Grammy, I'm sure you have one of those moments where it's like, oh, holy shit, who saw this coming? And that's neat. You can't help but think that's kind of neat. On the other hand, the Grammys, I don't quite understand why they're still a thing. Here's why. There's so much music that gets made now. It shouldn't just be the Grammy Awards. It should just be the Pop Music Awards, because now there's so many different circles. There's so many different brands. There's so many different tastemakers. And if there is still the concept of pop music, and that's fine. I'm personally not big on it. I don't even really pay attention to it, to tell you the truth. But that's fine that it's a thing. I have no objection to it. But those are the artists who win the Grammys, or artists that were established years ago so they still have a big enough following. And if you're making music that's meant to be played on the radio, that's meant to get that $1 million push, and it's either $1 million push or bust, you're playing with a completely different deck of cards than somebody who's just, making AAA rock and roll, or making alt country, or making Americana, or making, gritty singer-songwriter, or making, you get the idea. You're just playing with a completely different deck of cards. How do you determine that one is worth the Grammy and one isn't? I feel like you can't do that. So it should just be named the Pop Music Awards. Years ago, a lot of people said the labels were going to just go away entirely. I didn't think that, but what I thought was going to happen, which has kind of happened, was that labels were just going to become these tastemakers. They were just going to be kind of like these brand makers where you trusted a label, and that's how you found other music. That has been true for the most part, but to many people's surprise, some of these corporate entities are still putting out music, which I did not see coming. How are they still putting out music? Well, because they found other ways to dip into an artist's money. Now you get deals that are referred to as 360 deals. What that means is the label doesn't just make money off of selling your record. They make money off of your merchandise, and off of your touring revenue, and off of your publishing. They found ways to dip into your money as an artist in other ways so that they could stay afloat. And I get it. They're still pumping millions of dollars into these acts. However, they're not even just record labels anymore. They're just boutiques now. It has changed. So I don't see how you can determine who's worth the Grammy and who isn't. Here's some of the winners. Best R&B album, Sex and Cigarettes by Toni Braxton. Good Thing, Leon Bridges. Her, I've never even, some of this I've never even heard of. Let's see what else. Best Country Album, I've never heard of any of this. Unapologetically by Kelsey Ballerini. Port St. Joe, Brothers Osborne. Girl Going Nowhere, Ashley McBride. Golden Hour, all right, I've heard about Casey Musgraves, and that's the person who won. Chris Stapleton, Volume 2. What an original name for an album. We're calling this album Volume 2. Really? That's all you got? Yeah! You have like a creative team surrounding you. Volume 2 is the best you can come up with? We know that half the stuff... You know that in the pop country world, half of this shit was just made in a marketing office. Volume 2. That's the best they got. All right. Album of the year. The winner was Casey Musgraves' Golden Hour. I have at least heard of that. Post Malone got nominated. Her got nominated. Drake, Scorpion, Brandy Carlisle. Cardi B. I like what Cardi B's been saying about politics. Record of the year. All right. You've seen enough of me saying, hey, I haven't heard of any of this shit. Lady Gaga, I've heard of her. There we go. Song of the year. I've never heard of any of these songs. I've honestly never heard of any. This Is America was the song of the year. I've probably heard it. It was probably imposed on me while I was at my gym or something like that. But I don't know the name. So again, how do you have... I feel like if you're going to have any award shows, which I don't like award shows in general. I feel like they're just kind of a circle jerk. I'm not a fan. I never pay attention, even to ones that I should pay attention to. Also, hey, they do have a best comedy album. Agnostic Holiday did come out in 2018. I was not nominated, so... So there's that. Part of this could be my own bitterness. I was not nominated this year, everybody. I wonder if Kurt Vonnegut ever got a Grammy for like maybe a spoken word thing or something. I don't think he did. He might have, though. Never know. There's all kinds of people like you wouldn't expect them to have Grammys, but they do because they were in some kind of something or other. Well, anyway, let me see what you... Am I wrong? Or Grammy's freaking awesome and I'm just not cool? You know, and I'll do another kind of cool sentimental thing. So... When I first moved to Los Angeles, I was a pet sitter by day. That was like because when I moved to Los Angeles, I got off the road because I didn't want to be on the road anymore. I wanted to find, comedy writing work in Los Angeles. So I got off the road, kind of started all over again. I was still leaving town to do some college gigs, but I needed to find something to supplement my income. So I was a pet sitter, which was actually really freaking cool. And a lot of my clients had a lot of means because if you can afford a pet sitter in Los Angeles, you're doing pretty well. And one of my clients, he was a music video producer, and he had this thing where he had this framed piece of cardboard, and the piece of cardboard said, "Anything helps." And right next to that framed piece of cardboard, he had an MTV Video Music Award. And it was his before and after moment because, and I talked to him a little bit. What happened was he was homeless in Canada. He's from Canada. And he spent every dime he had because he wanted to do video production. He spent every dime he had getting down to Los Angeles. And he had to hitchhike the rest of the way there. And after he got to Los Angeles, well, eventually that happened for him. Eventually, he made a couple $1 million videos. So I think that's pretty cool. And I'm sure when he got that award, even though award shows are kind of BS, there was still that moment where, this is one of those pivotal moments where you're like, whoa, this happened. So, I got nothing but respect for, people that have those kind of stories. I think it's awesome they have that moment in the spotlight. I think that's cool. That's the one positive I see in award shows. But other than that, I just think it's a mawkish thing that I don't really understand the point of, especially in something like music, because it's like, how do you measure that? It should just be named the Pop Music Awards. Like that. Like it should just be renamed that. Because then you know, like, yeah, this is just for pop music. That music which is meant to have $1 million push behind it, which is meant to just be heard by a lot of people, which is just mass-produced music. It's like if you were giving the food awards, where it's like, hey, here's the food awards, here's the nominees. We got, like, McDonald's, Subway, Burger King, because that's what everybody knows. That's what everybody knows. It's like, well, gee, there's this... I can think of 5 restaurants on my block that are better than all those. How are they getting the award? Well, because that's what everyone knows. It's the same thing. You don't hear the food awards. You have different, like, organizations that rank restaurants according to the town they're in. No. So that restaurants get a fair shake. So that's like the equivalent. To me, the Grammys, it's like as if they had the food awards, and it would just be fast food restaurants that are nominated, because that's something everybody just knows. So it's like, this is the best. Hey, McDonald's won Best Burger of the Year the millionth time in the row. I'm sure all of you in your respective communities, wherever you live, can think of 5 places that have better burgers than McDonald's. But it wouldn't get nominated in the non-existent food Grammys that don't exist. You know why? Because they shouldn't exist. And that's why I don't really think the Grammys for music should necessarily exist either. They should just, again, Pop Music Awards. Let me see what you guys are saying before we move on to other stuff. Auto-tune ruined hip-hop. But Ron, there are food awards at state and local fairs. When it's localized, that's different. If they did like local music award, that'd be different. Haha. Chip says, shout out to Pim Pam Burgers in Barcelona. Should win that Grammy. You know, one of my best friends just got back from Barcelona. I would have given him that recommendation. Isn't a lot of punk rock the rebel music, you know? Like, there's a fine line. Green Day, Rancid, Misfits, etc. I'm not sure I understand your question. Isn't a lot of punk rock the rebel music, you know? Question mark. Sure. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the punk rock I listen to is subversive in nature, has a message, and has something to say. I don't know what you mean by there's a fine line. Like, I don't know what you mean by that. Schultze says, there's music everywhere, all over the world. Limited edition Ron Placone record. Hey, there's nothing limited about it. You can go get it wherever you get records. You can go download it off of iTunes. It's Agnostic Holiday. It's available now. It was not Grammy nominated. It was not up for Best Comedy Album of the Year. We'd be having an entirely different discussion today if it was. I would be. Oh, and I guess there are things that rank restaurants on a national level. Some of you guys are saying there are organizations that rank restaurants on a national level. That's interesting, but it's not. All right. Well, maybe my analogy sucks then. Cool. Well, there you go. The Grammys. They're a thing. Who wins? Who wins on the national level? Like who wins those awards that like rank restaurants? I mean, if you rank them nationally based on like what's going on locally, that's kind of different. All right, so you guys are talking about diners clubs and stuff like that. I still think it's different than the Grammys. I don't know. Maybe my analogy wasn't the best, but I still think that's a different situation than like if we had the food equivalent to the Grammys, it would be like what I described. Like it would be like, all right, so we got, because it's not based on quality, it's based on numbers served. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Maybe it wasn't the best analogy in the world, but I feel like the principle's there. Hi, Shannon. Anne-Marie says hi to Shannon. Hello, Shannon. She reminded me that your show is on. Thank you for doing that, Shannon. You are spectacularly, brilliantly hilarious. And thank you. That is very kind of you to say. And thank you very much for the Super Chat contribution. That is very much appreciated. And let's move on to other things. Here's something about Roger Waters. And I don't know if he won a Grammy this year. Maybe he did. I don't know. But acclaimed musician Roger Waters calls on people to demonstrate in Australia to defend Julian Assange. World-acclaimed musician and songwriter Roger Waters has sent the following endorsement of the demonstrators that the Socialist Equality Party in Australia has called in March to demand that Australian government immediately act to secure the freedom of WikiLeaks publisher Julian Assange. The rally in Sydney will be addressed by respected journalist and documentary filmmaker John Pilger. Roger Waters was a founding member of the band Pink Floyd in 1965 and has maintained a successful solo career since 1985. He's an outspoken opponent of injustice, defending Julian Assange, condemning the mistreatment of the Palestinian people, and opposing U.S.-led imperialist wars and interventions. Over recent weeks, he has opposed the attempted U.S.-backed coup in Venezuela. So here's what he has to say about that. This is Roger Waters speaking. Julian Assange is a national Australian treasure. He is a brilliant, brave, honest, humane, relevant, genuine journalist and publisher of immense influence and significance on the world stage. He has shown himself to be an enormous power for good in a world that is sadly, with some notable... He has shown himself to be an enormous power for good in a world that is sadly, with some notable exceptions, starved of his ilk. What Julian Assange is, as a publisher of real news, is a real hero. What he is not is a criminal. His initiative, WikiLeaks, helped expose to the world the hidden machinations of the real criminals in our society, the oligarchs, who in their insatiable quest for more and more wealth would destroy the fragile planet we call home. That's well said. That's very well said. Good for Roger Waters. It's amazing how people are just ignoring Julian Assange and what he's going through. It's amazing how they'll tone police. They'll do these big reports where like we were at an event and people chanted CNN sucks at us. Our feelings are hurt. Let's turn the cameras off now because there's other people that want autographs. Oh, so you mean you're part of the press and some people like you and some people don't? You're at a political event and you're part of the press. Some people like you, some people don't. That's newsworthy. And you're going to highlight the people that don't to play the victim. You're going to go crying on Twitter when the White House tells you to turn your cameras off and all of you like sheep say okay. Remember when that happened? Remember in the White House press briefing, the Trump administration told the entire press to turn their cameras off? They all did. Every single person sitting in that room should have lost their job, no exceptions. Every single person should have been fired. If we had a real news structure in this country, which we don't have one. If we did, all of them would have lost their jobs, bar none. Meanwhile, there's a real atrocity going on against press freedom, and it's what's happening to Julian Assange. And nobody's doing anything. When Randy Credicrow spoke up for Julian Assange at a press dinner, they kicked him out. And nobody reported it. Nobody even reported it. Nobody even mentioned, hey, there's someone here that actually cares about what's happening to a publisher. So good for Roger Waters. It's a shame that that more people with his platform aren't speaking out, but maybe this will lead to more. All right, so here's something interesting, and I don't know exactly how exactly all this played out. So I'm finding this out for the first time, as you are. Google Fiber's biggest failure, the ISP will turn service off in Louisville. Okay, so what's going on with Google Fiber and Louisville? Google Fiber will leave city and try to clean up the mess it made. Well, they better clean up the mess they made. Google, you got money. You better clean up the mess you made. All right, so what's going on here? Google Fiber will turn off its network in Louisville, Kentucky, and exit the city after a series of fiber installation failures left cables exposed in the roads. Yikes. Google Fiber's customers in Louisville will have to switch ISPs and will get their final 2 months of Google Fiber service for free. Well, that's good at least. Google Fiber went live in Louisville late in 2017, just a few months after construction began. The quick turnaround happened because Google Fiber used a shallow trenching strategy that is quicker than traditional underground fiber development and doesn't require digging giant holes. Instead of a foot-wide trench, a micro-trench is generally about an inch wide and 4 inches deep. In Louisville, Google Fiber reportedly was burying cables in nano trenches that were just 2 inches deep. Okay, so here's the quick lesson here. Now, for anyone that's not totally familiar with what Google Fiber is all about, so Google Fiber is Google's fiber internet project. And they wanted to demo in a handful of cities. And I believe among them, well, I know for a fact among them was Louisville, Nashville, Raleigh, North Carolina, and I believe Atlanta, Georgia, and then a couple others. And they were going to install fiber. They were going to make it available to residents, and they were going to kind of see what happened. And a lot of people were saying they're going to take out the other ISPs because their internet, it's going to be fiber. It's going to be so much faster than what Comcast and AT&T offers, and Time Warner and all the other corporate competitors. So Google's going to kind of take over fiber. Now, this is not the same, of course, as city-owned internet or city-owned fiber. This is Google's project. So what did Google do in this case? Well, they didn't go 2 inches deeper with running their fiber, so it fucked a bunch of stuff up. And why didn't they do it properly? To save money. I mean, the article says it. They wanted a quick turnaround, so they used a shallow trenching strategy. Louisville residents soon found exposed cables. In August of 2018, Google Fiber announced a plan to fix the problem, but Google never quite got it right. So now they're just leaving. So now everybody has to go back to AT&T. And here's yet another reason why we need municipal broadband all across the frickin' country. Because guess what? If they did a fiber to the home, if the city of Louisville did a fiber to the home project, I doubt that city residents would be like, hey, we're going to not bury this properly because it saves us money. Could really fuck us over and fuck our residents over. But who cares? Because you're not just experimenting on a city, because that's what Google's doing. They're experimenting on cities. So in this case, they're just like, oh, we fucked it up in Louisville. Lesson learned, we can't do 2-inch trenches anymore. Let's move on to a different town now. See you, Louisville. Fuck off. That's what an entity like Google will do. That's what an entity like Comcast will do. That's what an entity like AT&T will do. If it's a city-owned fiber project, they're not experimenting on a town. It's their fucking town. It's home for them. So this is why Google Fiber is not the answer to solving net neutrality. This is why Comcast is not the answer. AT&T is not the answer. This is why we need municipal broadband all across the country. We need city-owned internet all across the country. This will solve net neutrality once and for all. And this will put the internet in control of the people, not in control of price gouging corporate entities that are looking to screw you. Because the internet, we need the internet. This wouldn't exist. Without the free and open internet, this right now would not exist. And if net neutrality goes away completely, this will cease to exist. Shows like this will not exist. Because there will be paid priority, and content creators that can't afford to foot the bill, they're out of luck. Your internet will look like cable television 2.0. That's what will happen. And once we lose a medium, it's gone forever. We don't get it back. Look at radio, look at television. That's what they're trying to do with internet now. And that's why we need to hold the front lines on net neutrality. Because if we lose it, we're going to lose it forever. And here's just another, for instance, of the corporatocracy playing with your internet access and not caring about the consequences. Because to them, it's just a lesson learned and a couple dollars lost. To the people of Louisville, they just got fucked over. And I hope there's some folks in Louisville that decide to take this event and use it as a push for municipal broadband. I know there's some people in Louisville working on municipal broadband because they've reached out to me, and I met them when I performed in Louisville last. If you guys are watching this, I hope you're all doing well. Please feel free to reach out to me and let me know how that's going for you. I know if your experience is anything like mine, it's probably a very slow climb uphill. But other cities are showing us it can be done. Marshall, Michigan, town of 7,000, just got their own municipal project. If a town of 7,000 can do it, I feel like any town can do it. And I bet they're going to take the time to dig the fucking hole deep enough. Because they give a shit. Good job, Google. So, speaking of net neutrality, we'll transition into another net neutrality story here. It's okay, everyone. Congress's smart cookie Republicans have the answer to America's net neutrality quandary. So, Republicans do have some potential bills out there that are supposed to be their response to net neutrality. Like they're saying, okay, we're going to give you a little bit of what you want, but here's our solution for net neutrality. And of course, they're not good bills. Of course, they don't actually save net neutrality. But here are some details. Here's what's going on with it. Let's take a look at this. All right, so Greg Walden, a Republican out of Oregon, who has introduced some legislation. Here's what's going on with it. The legislation will include all the protections everyone is worried about. Blocking, throttling, and paid prioritization. ISPs won't be allowed to do them. All right, so the article says, done. It's a wonder we all didn't agree to this instead. And of course, this is sarcastic in the article. Okay, so here's the rub, if you will. There's only one tiny detail. Internet access will still be considered a Title I information service and not revert to being Title II. It's a minor thing, very technical, not worth worrying about. Oh, but it is. Oh, but it is. So the article goes on to explain, except of course someone was worrying about it. Republicans pointed out that the proposed bill would change the definition of Title I to authorize the FCC to oversee complaints. But Party Pooper Dixon told the committee that the rules outlined wouldn't adequately protect consumers because the federal regulator, the FCC, would not have any oversight powers under Title I. So let's break that down. This bill says, hey, this is the Republican response to net neutrality. Hey, all right, ISPs, you can't block, you can't throttle, you can't have paid prioritization. All right, that's all in the bill. Customers, nothing to worry about. They can't do that. That's still illegal. That's all the things you like about net neutrality. Here's the thing, though. We're going to designate the internet a Title I classification. What that means is it's considered an information service like television or radio. A Title II designation is a telecommunications common carrier like a telephone or running water. That's how Title II is treated. The internet was classified as Title II just several years ago. So because it's a Title I, let's say these ISPs decide, we're going to see what we can get away with, and we're going to throttle some stuff, we're going to ban some stuff, we're going to have some paid prioritization. It's kind of going to go on under the radar. We're going to kind of do it in a weird red tapey way so that we can kind of go under the radar with this, and we'll have a good case in court. And people go to the FCC and they say, hey, this is messed up, this is happening. Well, guess what? Because the internet's considered a Title I, the FCC can't do anything about it. So this legislation is like, hey, ISPs, you can't do any of this. Wink, wink, you can't do anything. But if you do it anyway, the FCC can't do shit. Who can do shit? Pretty much nobody. Pretty much nobody. So if under this Republican legislation that's supposed to be a compromise on net neutrality, they're basically saying, hey, here's the compromise. We're going to have in words that ISPs, internet service providers, can't screw you over, but they can without consequence. The only way they would face any consequences if a community had some kind of joint lawsuit, had some kind of massive lawsuit, and won, which, good luck with that. So do not fall for the Republican scam net neutrality bill, because that's what it is. It's a scam bill. Don't fall for it. All right, so we got to end a little early today. So I got one more, then I'm going to go to you guys, and then we're going to end a little early today because I have a meeting I need to get to. All right. Here's something that kind of sucks. Trump signs budget deal giving taxpayer money to churches. Unconstitutional. Trump signs a new budget deal giving taxpayer money to churches in direct violation of the U.S. Constitution. In disastrous news for those of us who respect the Constitution and the secular values upon which this nation was founded, President Donald Trump has signed the Bipartisan Act of 2018. In particular, the new budget allows FEMA funds to be used to rebuild churches and other house of worship damaged or destroyed by natural disasters. So here's the actual verbiage. A church, synagogue, mosque, temple, or other house of worship, educational facility, or any other private nonprofit facility shall be eligible for contributions under paragraph IB without regard to the religious character of the facility or the primary religious use of the facility. No house of worship, educational facility, or any other private nonprofit may be excluded from receiving contributions. So, churches get relief money when they never paid into the tax pool for it. And then, I mean, hey, taxes, churches use the streets. If something happens, they call the fire department and they don't pay a dime in taxes. Churches should be paying taxes just like everybody else. They don't pay a dime. And they're eligible for all these other things. And they don't, you know, I'm self-employed. I can use myself as a for instance. I'm self-employed, all right? And under the current tax law, and I've been self-employed pretty much most of my life. The way the tax laws work in the United States, I would never be eligible for unemployment. And that's what, I mean, it's a choice. I choose to be self-employed. I choose it. But self-employed people like me, we're never eligible for self-employment. We pay into the system, though. We pay taxes. We pay into that system, but we're not eligible to take anything out of it. And that's just the way it is. You just accept that as the way it is. I accept it. That's the way it is. It's not necessarily fair, but it's the way it is. Churches don't pay a dime for anything, yet they get relief money in this, for instance. They can violate the separation of church and state through no consequence. Just look into what the Mormons did in regards to Prop 8. So they can interfere with politics all the time, have no consequence whatsoever. So they can violate the rules on their end, no consequence. They're still tax exempt. They use the same streets as everybody else. They use the public school buses in many cases. That was the case in my community. Yet they don't pay a dime in taxes. They pay nothing into it. So the big takeaway from this story is not only that the Trump administration is doing something atrocious towards the separation of church and state, which every Republican administration does. Not only is that the main theme here, the other theme here is, yet again, another, for instance, why churches should be paying taxes and should have been paying taxes for years. There's no reason why they should be tax exempt. None whatsoever. None at all. All right. Let's see what you guys are saying. And that'll be how we end the show today. My guest says, I'm thinking of starting my own religion. Sagittarius also echoes that. We need to start our own religion. Garden Gnome, you were thinking about buying an old church? You know, churches are really cool buildings. Like, just talking from, like, an architecture standpoint. I mean, that's why, like, so many of them, it's incredible. Like you go to a country like Italy or and you see these old churches, like the structures, like they're amazing. They're absolutely, they'll take your breath away. And buying an old church would be incredibly badass because there's so many cool things you could do with a building like that. I mean, a lot of times you see these places, there's some of the best music venues in the world. You find out they used to be a church because the acoustics were perfect. Same with recording studio, substitute recording studio with music venue, same deal. Slow News Day says that Killer Mike started a religion. I never heard about that. Is that true? I never heard about that. Maybe I don't know. That's according to Slow News Day. I've never heard it. Jennifer says, geez, I guess you have to pay rent to be an atheist. Well, technically, no. I guess, I don't know if Sunday Assembly is recognized as an actual religion or not. I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't know the answer to that one way or another. Marcus says, I shall found the Church of Clinton, pray at the altar of neoliberalism. Well, Marcus, you would have a lot of members, actually, unfortunately. Oh, man. Guys, we are totally out of time. Real quick before we go, does anyone think that churches should be tax exempt? Does anyone want to? Chris Wynn gives a famous Carlin quote, God is all powerful and he loves you, but he needs money. Alfonso does say that Amish churches should be tax exempt because they don't really use the roads. All right, maybe. I can see that. Tax churches, tax them. Make them pay. All right, pretty much everybody is for taxing the churches. Fair enough. Joseph says, remember that one time when Peter Dow said that Hillary Rodham Clinton is a belief? I don't remember that. But it wouldn't surprise me. Whether you're kidding or not, neither one would surprise me. Guys, we are totally out of time. We're totally out of time because I got to get off early today. That came out weird. That came out really weird. I got to get off early today. I got to go early today because I have a meeting I have to get to. Thank you for today's Get Your News On with Ron. If you want to support this show on the sustainability end, please do consider becoming a patron. It'll help me make upgrades to the show. It'll help me do more streams. It'll help me build this show. Patreon.com/Ron Placone. And you get a bunch of cool perks. You get a bunch of cool exclusive content. You get to hear a bunch from my cat, Lucy. It's fun times. Tour dates, March, going to the Gulf. Grab those tickets. Lafayette, Louisiana, Pensacola, Florida, Oxford, Mississippi, New Orleans, Louisiana. We're doing a tour of Texas in April. We're going to be in Salt Lake City and Boise in May. And we're going to be on the East Coast in June. We're still finalizing some East Coast tour dates. But Baltimore, D.C., New York City, New Haven, Connecticut. Tickets for all those shows available now. RonPlacone.com for all tickets. I will be back tomorrow. You guys are amazing. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks for bearing with me through that tech glitch at the beginning. Glad we powered through it. You guys rock. I will see you tomorrow. Please like these videos. Please share these videos. Please tell your friends about this show because this is Get Your News On with Ron, the world's first viewer-curated streaming news show. We would not have a show without you guys. So thanks for being here. We'll be back tomorrow. Same time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Pacific Time, and whatever time, wherever you're at. I can only do so many time zones, you guys. I can only recite so many. But you guys know the time. You guys know the place. See you tomorrow.